Ready? Here we go.
Different points of view and highs and lows. A new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind, drown out the noise, and see if this connected. And see if this connected.
What's up, fam? The mission of this connected podcast is to connect generations and situations about faith, life, and whatever comes along the way. To not necessarily agree, but again, as I always say, be listened to. These conversations, of course, share the different perspectives of me and my guest. You, of course, are always welcome to agree or even disagree, but as always, we hope that it is done in charity. I'm Catholic.Dad, and my guest today is no one other than Just Joe from Just Joe podcast. And Joe DeLeon is 26 years old. She's a lover of all things philosophy and theology, especially if it's written by St. Thomas Aquinas. Whoa, that's way over my head. And she's an auntie of two nieces, Harley and Elena. Loves Korean barbecue so much that she had it 5 times in 1 week before. I love Korean barbecue, not that much. We'll talk about that later. And the reason why Catholic.Dad does not like Korean barbecue. And she's also one of the hosts of the podcast called Roots Podcast, also a member, a facilitator for young adult ministry called, again, Roots Yam from St. Margaret Mary in Chino. She also has her own podcast called Just Joe. Go check it out. So welcome to the podcast, Joe, and tell us a little bit something about yourself the second time around.
Yeah, I don't even know what I'm going to say right now, but so Joe, my name is Joe, and 26. Honestly, like the very first things I usually tell somebody is I'm a nerd about all things nerdy, but not like everything that, obviously there's a lot of like nerds out there, but I can, I can talk about what is it called? I can talk about like physics so much and like conspiracy like theories so much, where just because anything that like really engages my mind and that really challenges my mind, I can talk hours about that. So, but especially when it's about theology or philosophy, then I can just sit there with somebody and just have like a grand old time.
Yeah, I'm scared already when you said that. Philosophy, and I almost failed my philosophy class in college. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't for me.
I was equally like intimidated by it, but then I figured out, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a class about thinking, like there's a whole course about, or there's a whole major about thinking, dude, that's where I'm at.
You have this thing says you had me at Aquinas right behind you.
Oh yes.
For those people who aren't watching this on YouTube, she has this banner behind her and says, "You had me at Aquinas." I'm like, what's that about? I'm like, that scares me.
So well, St. Thomas Aquinas is one of, well, to me, he's the best Western theologian and even philosopher. He's a doctor of the church, so all the stuff that he's written are known to be actual, official church teaching. Most of it, he wrote the Summa. Well, that's short for Summa Theologica, which is Latin for the summary of theology of the Catholic Church, which is not it's a fat summary. So
Yeah, that's not easy. That's not easy reading. Like, I have the abridged version. Call it the Spark Notes of the Summa Theologia.
oh, it's hard, but it's poetry to me. Actually, it's kind of, that's the way I describe
Now
his
you
work.
said earlier in our conversation that you were born in the Philippines. I think that's something that we have in common. I also was born in the Philippines, and I came here also when I was 7.
Oh wow,
So yeah,
what a magical number.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. First grade, and coming here and coming
Yeah.
into the second grade,
Hmm.
and being the one that didn't speak English and had funny looking clothes. Apparently,
Were
the
they
style.
baggy?
Yeah, it was like, yeah, everything was baggy. I'm like,
Right? Yeah.
when my mom would never buy anything that actually fit. She would buy you clothes that fit you like 2 years from now, so it lasts.
Yeah. I just had a flashback. That's why, because it's so true.
Yeah, it's like it wasn't bad enough that you were the nerdy Asian kid in school.
Hmm.
You also were the nerdy Asian kid that wore clothes that were 2 sizes bigger than you.
That's facts. Cause same.
I was like, oh man, it's like having Catholic moms and Filipino Catholic moms.
Oh yeah.
Just
They need a whole show to themselves.
we do, you know. I posted an image on Instagram that if I love nativity scenes that people put out there,
Hmm.
and one that really just puts me on, just reminds me of my mom, I had to put out, and it's with there's a door and
Hmm.
baby Jesus is right next to the door, and it's nighttime. It always
Hmm.
brings me back, so I put a image of I cut out an image, cropped in an image of my mom at the door, and says, "This is what would happen if Saint Anne was a Filipino mom." She would come in and say, "Joseph, Mary, what are you doing? It's cold outside. Put that baby Jesus inside." And it's like lucky you have me here. It's like, "Joseph, go to my camel and get my Gucci purse. I left it there." I was like, that's typical Catholic Filipino mom.
It really is. Yeah.
It's like, and get these animals out of here. They're dirty. They probably have a virus or something.
Oh, a virus.
Yeah.
Speaking of.
So the reason why I asked you to come on, Joe, on this podcast and invited you, and thank you for accepting, is that I follow you on your podcast, Just Joe. I follow you on Rootscast, and I've been watching your YouTube podcast, Just Joe, um, and you tackled a topic that was being trending right now, and
Hmm.
people are talking about it. People are posting about it. There's conflicts with regards to it, and it's on the vaccine. It's on actually on the COVID-19 vaccine, which is coming out, and
Hmm.
people are receiving it currently.
Hmm.
We've been trying to do this podcast for about a week and a half, and the devil has
Yeah.
really been preventing us. We should have had this out before people started getting the vaccine, but uh,
It's
but
okay.
but now it's out. So I really
Hmm.
wanted to talk to you about that because you had mentioned that one of the things that you really want to talk about is social justice. And in a way, people don't realize that the issue with the COVID vaccine and things like this falls into line with social justice because it you had mentioned something that concerns you, and that's what I
Hmm.
wanted to talk to you about with the vaccine. um, we as Catholics, we as Christians, we people who are in the pro-life movement, uh,
Hmm.
are kind of falling into a conundrum. What do we do? What do we do in the direction that the church provides? So let's talk about that. Let's discuss that. Let's have a conversation about that over
Hmm.
coffee on this side.
Right.
So, what's your take? I mean, have you been asked when COVID hit and this whole thing of lockdown and
Hmm.
people have been dying in my family in my family we've had a few deaths. uh,
Hmm.
in
Oh,
my
okay.
parish we've had many friends who've passed away.
Hmm.
The sad thing about that is we've never been able to grieve
Right.
those people because we never even got to go to their funeral.
Right.
And one of the difficult things for, I believe, as Catholics is we have to kind of, it's the morbid curiosity. We have to see the body and we have to say goodbye.
Sure.
uh,
Yeah.
and when we've had so many people pass away and we didn't even see the funeral, we don't even know if they were buried. uh,
Right.
there was a period of time where we couldn't even bury people,
Right.
and they were left in the morgue. There was a lot of things that, is this real? It was surreal, uh, having to stay home Christmas and Thanksgiving and being just with your immediate family, just the four of us all the time, just seeing each other. That was the reality of COVID. And then the whole thing of this push for a vaccine as fast as you can,
Yeah.
and and working in the medical field, we're like, man, this is going so fast. I mean,
Right.
has it been tested? I mean, my wife does clinical research, and she's like, this is going super fast. Uh, so it's like, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation that I'm seeing out there, um, on social media, is from people saying you shouldn't, and people saying you should, and common people, our listeners, who are usually, you know um, younger people, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and their parents are wondering, um, should we take this? I've never been asked so many times by people and says, Mr. Arnell,
Right.
are you going to take this vaccine? And I was like, in the beginning, I was like, you know what? I hadn't thought of it.
Right.
Honestly, had not thought about it because I really didn't think that it would come out so
So
quickly.
quickly. Yeah.
You thought that you had time to process, that the church would give guidance, um, and things would clear up. And all of a sudden, today, it's there,
Mm-hmm.
and people are lining up. The conversations are, "I want mine." It wasn't, the discussion is changing from "should we" to "when do I get mine."
Right. Right.
So
It's already secured. Yeah.
it's already secured. I'm like, so what's your take on that? With, first of all, the COVID vaccine? Yeah.
Um. There's there's actually three aspects of it that that takes primacy over a lot of things. And so there's the morality of it. There's the when you said that, the church's guidance, and the approach, and I guess basically how to shepherd the flocks. And then the third one is the making it an obligation, or just so generally there's the freedom of the choice of taking it, right, the medical freedom. But first and foremost, though, so morality, I've never wavered, ever since it was announced that there was the vaccines were going to be excuse me, distributed already, within when they announced it, what, 2-3 months ago, maybe 2 months ago.
Hmm.
And so that's when I started following it a lot more closely, because I was like you said, I was like, okay, now I gotta watch it, because it's a lot quicker than I thought. And I remember back then, there wasn't much content or information yet about, as far as transparency of the information yet, about what I guess the ingredients of the vaccine, Pfizer and Moderna.
Hmm.
And the first few news articles I read about them claimed first that it did use the fetal cell lines. And I was like, okay, no, that's a straight up no for me, even then already, right? And so, and there was a couple of weeks later, there was a lot of clarification, and I was like, okay, cool. And there's a really cool institute, I forgot what they're called. It's CLI, I think. And they do a lot of, they're a Catholic institute, and they do a lot of medical research. And they have this really cool diagram, and just a lot of content, information handouts of all, not just about the vaccine, but just anything that has to do with abortion and end of life stuff, right? And so they're the ones who I super trust, as far as the correct information out there. It's free from propaganda language, as I would say. So they're the ones I found out that it wasn't made. Those two weren't made. In the design and in the production, it didn't include the fetal cell lines, but it did include, or it was involved in the testing phase. And so, even with that, for me, where I stand is that I don't think it's morally permissible to still receive the vaccine, even with just the remote. And that's one of the church teachings is remote passive cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that is, so there's let's step back a little bit. There's formal cooperation, so that's like direct involvement in a evil
It's like if I was
action.
doing the actual, if
Like
I was the one making the decision, it says we are going to use um, tissue from aborted fetuses. I
yeah, so
I am making that decision to
yes,
create those. I am the one
yeah,
doing the abortion.
yeah. So you're doing, so you're the one like, okay, we're aborting that baby for the use of this, to get those cell lines for that, just in this specific context. And then, so that's formal. So formal is just a direct, like you were just basically touching, like, you were hands on that evil act. And then passive or remote cooperation is people who are receiving the vaccines, right? Or not people, but the act of receiving the vaccine from a abortion-derived fetal cell line. So those are the terms I want to first like talk about or just briefly mention. But yeah, so even with the remote cooperation, I still am against it. But yeah, that's in brief summary right now.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, I was there with you, and the reason why I asked you is you're probably one of those younger people that hold views most similar to myself,
Mm.
uh, because conservative, uh,
Yeah.
um with your pro-life ideals,
Hmm.
um, and one of the things with social justice is life,
Yeah.
which is pro-life. But also, we have to look at, what I always try to tell people is the pro-life movement is not just about abortion.
Oh
Pro-life
no.
means about life. It means about the life of the elderly. It means about the people who are imprisoned. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, and but I also say to people who talk to me about, you know, if you're anti-abortion, why aren't you about this issue?
Right. Right. Right.
I was like, well, that's because
Bunch of logical fallacies.
yeah. I'm like, but that's because that's not my platform. That's not what I am. You know,
Right.
I support the Leukemia Lymphoma Society because it has a direct impact on people that I support. That's what I run for. I don't run. I didn't run marathons for the Cancer Society. Period. I ran for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. That was my sole focus,
Right. Right.
and that's how I try to explain,
That's a good
my
way.
thing with abortion and other life issues,
Sure.
because it's a logical fallacy. It's like,
Yeah, it is.
stop. But with this, I really had, again, to pray about it.
Same.
Um,
I still am too.
and in my line of work, and I'm glad that you brought up, passive material cooperation and remote cooperation with this, because at first, when I was reading that and I was listening to the bishops
Hmm.
saying this, I said, but it's still cooperation. Um, it's still cooperation. It's still, for me at that time, it's still condoning the use of these fetal cell lines uh,
Hmm.
to to receive a vaccine out of that. I really felt like I was betraying the this movement of pro life. If I take this vaccine, am I condoning uh,
Right.
um, these abortions?
Hmm.
And so that was something that I had to really look at,
Yeah.
and I went to trying to research and listen and asking people, can someone send me some information on why I would say yes, or why I would be able to tell someone in good conscience Yeah, it's okay to receive the vaccine. Um, and I'm still looking, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm a lot closer to it
Mm-hmm.
than I was just a couple of weeks ago
Sure.
when we started having that conversation.
Yeah.
But where are you at now? I mean,
I have. It's been a really tough 2.5 weeks, I think, since then. Well, before I released that episode, because it happened before that. It's been really tough because I'm also realizing at the same time that the reason why also Just Joe podcast came about, it's the timing of it is definitely divine providence, because it was just a little backstory, I guess, is it Just Joe. I never planned it. Like, it was born out of out of prayer. I heard God. He's like, go. I did it that same day. And so, so everything about it, if it seems unorganized, it's because it is. It was, it wasn't something that I planned for. And then, so the more that, um, quick little plug, because one of the first, like, I guess, taboo subjects in the Catholic world that I released, the topic was about pornography, culture, specifically in the Catholic Church. And so now it's like, okay, I think that was just like he was inching me towards this more of like you're going to get in there, Joe, and so
mhm.
it's like the now, what's in the conversation now, and, not just in the Catholic world, but everywhere. And so, I'm still having a hard time. And because one of the things that, like, St. Thomas Aquinas taught me is that the reason why he's a lover of truth is because, Jesus is the truth. And so anything that is not that does the truth a disservice, he rejects. But he has to, what he does is he learns about the, what is contrary to truth to serve the truth, right? And so, and that takes a lot of courage and humility, because, for me, at least, in where I'm at in my journey, is that, like, it's taking a lot of, my pride is taking a lot of, hit, like, which is great, because but the tough thing is trying to figure out, like, am I rejecting this one thing that I'm learning because I'm afraid to not, that what I think is right is actually wrong, or am I rejecting it because it's actually wrong? Like, trying to find and trying to discern, like, where the spirit is residing in me, and, not just the voice that is just the bad Just Joe. I want the good Just Joe. And so right now I'm still, if I were to be asked right now, like, to take it, I would still say no. Like, that's where I am right now. But interiorly, I follow a Father Christopher Petrasco or something. I don't know. He's a Dominican priest. I am obviously a fan of Dominicans because St. Thomas Aquinas is an order of the preacher. Member, and so he brought up this. He was the only person I've been waiting for to comment about the vaccine,
Mhm.
right? I didn't care about Catholic answers. I didn't really, like, I wasn't following Matt Fradd or anything about it. I really respected this priest, the way he approaches things, because he's super close to me, the way, like, St. Thomas Aquinas is. Anyways, he brought up this point of view, or this, not even point of view. He brought up this truth, and he said, this is, I'm rephrasing it, but this is the way I understood it. He was talking about our taxpayers, right? And since our taxes, we don't have control over them, right, where they're allocated to, but
Mhm.
since a good portion of it goes to Planned Parenthood, remotely we are funding, active abortions right now.
Mhm.
And so in the context of that, compared to and contrasted to the vaccine, with the abortion that happened like decades ago, which is the argument that is, always put, in the forefront about, the morality, or the morally, if it's morally permissible to receive the vaccine, is because abortion that they derived the cells from happened decades ago. and so it's not an ongoing thing, right? So that's, so he posed that, and it left me in this, and I'm still in it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's very true. Like the money, every time as I work every day, as anyone who works every day, we're technically working to fund Planned Parenthood. I mean, I really hate saying that, but and that's the truth. And so that's the strongest thing that has ever like really have like really stuck in me. And like, and I think it's more so because that actually made me think more about how far our society has departed from being governed by God's law, by the eternal law. Like I know we're talking about a very like specific minute part of the detail of what's happening in the world, but that, like, when I read that, it just made me think of how much one thing of a policy really has changed everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I've become so passionate about Catholic social teaching and politics, because that single policy from Roe v. Wade, I'm just going to mention it already because January is the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, just changed our the way that we live and where our money goes. And anyways, so that's where I'm at with that right now.
I think it's really hard for people in the pro-life movement, for us, to look at material cooperation
Yeah.
with abortion and still live in the world. Um, I believe it's in First Corinthians, chapter 5, where St. Paul said that we have to live in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I love is live in the world, but not of the world.
Right.
Um, the whole thing with can we eat the meat from animals that were offered to idols? You didn't offer that animal to the idol.
Right.
You didn't. That wasn't your intention. But if you go into someone's home and they offer you meat that they're eating, and that meat was offered, that animal was offered to that idol, did you offer that animal to that idol, or are you just eating the meat? Is your cooperation direct cooperation? No, it's not. And so I look at, a lot of our listeners love this coffee shop, and this coffee shop has a mermaid symbol.
Oh.
And that coffee shop supports
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
I shop at this shop that has a big Target symbol on it, and it supports Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
I love that shop. I like buying things there.
Yeah.
I used to go to work wearing beige and red, and people would think I was an employee. So it's very difficult. It's almost nearly impossible to go buy anything in the world
Yeah.
does not have a direct contact or affiliation
Yeah.
to
Any
the sin of
religious.
abortion.
Yeah.
So what is a person who's trying to live out that their faith to do? Do we start making our own clothes? Do we start growing our own coffee? What do we do? Do we boycott? And I hate that word boycott, when people
Mm-hmm.
put out there that you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, and they're putting it out on social media. I don't know if
Right.
you see that. I see that. I see a lot of argument
Oh
on
yeah. Yeah.
social media. I mean, uh, sometimes I like to comment just to see what kind of attacks you're gonna get,
Yeah.
and I just found out that I don't like being attacked. It makes me uncomfortable.
That's funny.
It's like, why did I post that? I mean, and the thing is, when you post something, you can't take it
Take
back,
it back.
and then people are commenting on it forever
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
misinterpreting it or misunderstanding it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's very difficult to live in the world,
Yeah.
and to just simply say boycott. I love it when I forget who said it, that if you have an issue with the Pfizer vaccine or these vaccines, that they used fetal cell lines from elective abortions. You shouldn't just go on Facebook. You shouldn't just go on your Instagram account and say, I am not going to take this because they used aborted fetuses. Because for me, that's virtue signaling. So look at
Yes.
me, look at me. I'm not going to take it
Yeah.
because it has.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you doing about it aside from posting?
Yeah.
What you should be doing is sending a letter to the company and saying, you know what, I am not
Mm-hmm.
going to take this
Mm-hmm.
because of this. And that works
Yeah.
because, it's kind of like I was listening to a radio show where this guy was complaining that the most sold board game was Ouija boards.
Oh, that sucks.
And he was like that. So what he's been doing is he's been going to stores and buying Ouija boards and then burning them.
He's still.
And so what the radio announcer said is, well, you're just defeating the purpose, because what
Yeah.
they'll do is they're saying, oh my goodness, look, they're
Someone's
selling
buying
so
it.
many, so let's make more.
Yeah.
And you're actually promoting it. It says, why don't you
Yeah.
just write letters and get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people to write letters and say, we refuse to buy
Mm-hmm.
these Ouija boards? And maybe that'll have a direct impact. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I always, it's kind of like when you don't like something at a liquor store and you say, hey, you
Yeah.
know what? I shop here all the time, and I don't like that
Mm-hmm.
displayed there.
Mm.
You have a direct impact right there.
Yeah. Because you're talking directly to the.
Directly to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
Say, I'm not going to shop here anymore, and I go to this church and I'm going to tell everyone not to shop here. And says, wait, 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 I'm going to lose business.
Mm-hmm.
So he
Mm-hmm.
gets to make that decision himself. That if he wants my business and the business of all the people that I talk to, then
Right.
he's not going to put that out there. That's what's so beautiful about our process. But what's
Yeah.
not beautiful is just complaining and whining and virtue signaling
Oh yeah.
and
Oh
say,
yeah.
look at me because I'm not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that leads me to someone who asked me, it's like, well, why don't you say something about it and use your platform? And I'm like, I don't think I have a platform. I was like, it's like, and I always thought that, and people need to make a conscious decision
Yeah.
that is good for them based on facts. But it's hard for people, to make decisions, and they rely on what's posted out there on social media to
Yeah.
make their decisions. It's disheartening sometimes. So with material cooperation, you had said earlier, passive material cooperation, direct material cooperation, and remote material cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I dwelled
Mm-hmm.
on what to do regarding um, receiving the COVID vaccine. And what I originally was on is, if my mother was still alive and I lived with her,
Mm-hmm.
and it, it would be very difficult for me to make that decision for myself to say, I am not going to receive this vaccine because it has the fetal cell lines. Um, and I just can't see myself
Mm-hmm.
doing that. So I had to go back and research,
Mm-hmm.
um, because all this talk about fetal cell lines and saying, that the vaccine has, people were saying it has fetal tissue in the vaccine, and I'm like, I don't know. I just did not have much knowledge on that, and so that's where I went to.
Yeah.
What are fetal cell
Cell
lines,
lines. Yeah.
and what's the difference between fetal tissue
Mm-hmm.
and fetal cell lines? And so I actually wrote something here. It says fetal cell lines are not the same as fetal tissue. Fetal cell lines are cells
Mm-hmm.
grown in a laboratory, um, that the descendants from the cell lines taken from elective abortions in the 1970s and the 1980s, Those individual cells from the 70s and 80s have since multiplied into many new cells over the past 4 to 5 decades, creating fetal cell lines, which are thousands of generations removed from the original fetal tissue.
Yeah.
So, what what that gave me some light. It just still does not, you know, ease my stomach to feel that this that humans were used so that I can have this vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It's gross.
Mm-hmm.
It's disgusting
Mm-hmm.
uh, that would happen. But my long answer to someone who asked me that was that I have to believe that God would not allow evil to happen if good could not come out of it. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's the toughest thing is, does God have a good thing that comes out of this evil? You know, we look
Mm-hmm.
at we look at, for about 17 years I worked with the developmental disabled.
Mm-hmm.
I loved working with the developmental disabled. Um, One of the reasons why I'm pro-life is because I worked with the developmental disabled. I
Mm.
know the gifts of
Wow.
people who can't do for themselves, how they can make you more holy,
Mm-hmm.
how they can humble you, how someone whose day is brightened because they saw you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's
Mm-hmm.
just amazing the gift that God gives
Yeah.
through the gift of someone who has a disability.
Ability.
Um, and finding out later that the disability was not their physical disability, but my disability to not be able to love someone as
Right.
much as they do. Uh, but again, what I saw in there in the history of mental illness in our country is how much our country had used people with disabilities in experimentation,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
experimentation of treatment toward autism,
Mm-hmm.
treatment of, you know, um, hydrocephaly, how
Mm-hmm.
to prevent hydrocephaly. They literally experimented on human beings in state hospitals. And I had to look at that and say, does God have good that's coming from this evil? I had read that the Nazis used the
Yeah.
Jews
Yeah. I read
with
that too.
hypothermia,
Mm-hmm.
which we learned so much.
It's
I
from
mean,
yeah.
we all take Bayer aspirin.
Mm-hmm.
Bayer is a German company who had
Mm-hmm.
direct material involvement in the
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust, and yet we use their products. I mean, we drive BMWs. It's like Mercedes Benzes. I mean, do we have, how remote is our connection with the Nazis? Um, in that, I mean, I'm ranting on and going all over the place with this, and maybe that's because I'm still very uncomfortable with making a
Yeah.
decision
Processing. Yeah.
and processing. But in my line of work, I directly talk with level of care staff
Right.
who have direct contact with patients.
Patient.
If I don't take this vaccine and my staff are the ones working with the patients, um, am I doing it for me or am
Right.
I doing it for them? And I fall back to the Gospels, which is the two great commandments is to love God,
Mm-hmm.
and I do. And the second commandment is to love others. And am I? And I fall into that predicament where, am I not receiving the vaccine out of love for God?
Yeah. Same.
Or am I not taking the vaccine because I don't love others as much as I love myself? Am I protecting myself or am I protecting others? And I think that's what we have to pray about is,
Yeah.
am I following the greatest commandment or am I looking at me and saying, I really don't want to go to hell and I don't want to commit this sin? Or am I going to go to hell because is this a sin?
Right.
And it's it's just hard.
Yeah.
What do you do? And and again, the we were talking about the letters from the bishops,
Oh yeah.
the the one that bites, because you had said that, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
And when we read that letter, it almost like now I feel guilty.
Yeah. I definitely felt guilt trip reading, that statement from the Diocese of San Bernardino.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like oof, yeah. I mean, if I don't, um, then I almost feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
But when I we shared the note on the morality of using some anti-COVID-19 vaccines from the CDF, the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, there was something in there. There was a paragraph that said that it's up to you. You don't have to.
Yeah. It's not a moral obligation.
Not a moral obligation. And I think that yeah, when we Catholics, and for our non-Catholic listeners and viewers out there, you know, what's beautiful about the Catholic Church is this: if I can't figure out that decision for myself on what I need to do, I, we're called to go to another
Mm-hmm.
person, and go to Joe and say, Joe, what do you think about this? And let's hash it out. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
And if me and Joe can't figure it out, then we go to a higher source.
Mm-hmm.
And in our
Right.
church, the highest source is the church and the Pope,
Mm-hmm.
and the direction from, in this case, from that office, that castery, which is the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith. What does our faith say? It's not up to my interpretation of that scripture. It's not up to my interpretation of
Yeah.
the moral writings or teachings of certain priests. But what does the church say? What does the church say?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're obviously smarter than me. And again, some people think that it's cruel of the church to not be as clear. You know, just give me the black and white answers. Just say yes or no. I'm actually very happy that the church never says yes or no. I'm actually very happy of sometimes the church being very much on the asking questions and allowing you to think for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There are churches out there that tell you this is how you should think, this is how you should vote.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love the fact that the church says, I leave that up to you and for you to discern with your conscience. Speak, allow the Holy Spirit to speak to you
Mm-hmm.
and make an informed decision. And so, my answer to those people who are asking me, Mr. Arnell, are you going to take the vaccine? My answer to you is this: I refer you to the letter from the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith called Note on the Morality of Using Some Anti COVID-19 Vaccines. It's literally 2 pages long.
Yeah.
It's literally, I think, 7 paragraphs. Um,
Yeah. About.
but there's a lot of links to it if you want to go deeper. But this is my favorite. This is the Sparks Notes version of an answer that I was able to discern through. It talks a lot about what the vaccines are, talks about what our moral responsibility is. It talks about uh, what our participation is with abortion. It speaks on our responsibility to tell our politicians that what they should be asking for, promoting. That's why, again, with politics, I believe that everyone should be voting, especially on the local level, not only
Yes.
for the president, but on those policies.
The
That,
local matters a lot.
yes, the
More than
local,
people think.
the guys who are like directing that, if you have cell phones in my city of Fontana, that you're actually paying a whole lot of taxes
Hmm.
because of Fontana. Um, if you're living in my area and wondering why are there so many warehouses in our neighborhood, that's because you voted some of these people in.
Yeah.
And why taxes are so high, because you voted these measures in.
Yeah.
Uh, why are they using stem cells now, and
Hmm.
where are they getting them? Because you voted yes
Voted them
on
in.
that. So be smart about it.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I leave it to this. My workplace, without saying requires it,
Hmm.
says it's required,
Oh.
says um,
Oh, that's tough.
literally what it says in this document, that if you work in an environment that you have to look out for others, but if you choose not to, then I should take prophylactic measures to make sure that I don't infect others,
Right.
um, which means masking, face mask, things that we're doing right now, washing hands, which as a Filipino, you're always supposed to be doing anyways. Um, um, not a slam on my mom or my wife, but it's almost like, again, you feel pressured
Hmm.
to take the vaccine. The images of bishops taking the
Hmm.
vaccine. Uh, I know that it's supposed to comfort people to feel that they can. I think it has sometimes a impact on those people who get more confused. It's like they ask why.
Right.
Um, I don't know. Um, I believe that when that time comes, um, when um, at my work, when they offer it and say, okay, the vaccines are here, please put your name on the date and time that you will receive it,
Hmm.
I'll have to make that decision there. And
Hmm.
depending on my patients or my clients, uh, and how that would impact um, my livelihood,
Hmm.
how that would impact the people that I care for. Uh, I believe that it's an individual decision based on where you're at. I would never tell anyone that you should or you shouldn't based on how I feel.
Right.
I believe that, as you and me have talked about, you have to discern that. You have to prayerfully discern that. And as the CDF said, it is morally licit to not receive the vaccine. So here's the thing, I can literally use this document at my work to say, I am a conscientious
Objector.
objector to the vaccine. You may
Yeah.
not force me to
Yeah.
take this vaccine. Uh, and it says there, you can literally use this if you are
Yeah.
being
You can.
forced by your workplace, that you can be a conscientious objector to the vaccine. You can use
Hmm.
this document. Um, or you can use this document to justify, not saying that you need to justify it,
Justify. Yeah.
but you could say that it is licit for me to receive this vaccine. That the the cooperation is so remote that I can do that. You know, and here's the other thing: there are vaccines out there that
Don't have anything.
don't have
Any
anything,
involvement. Yeah.
don't have any more. So we can, if you're a person who has the ability to choose, then do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not a person who financially can't choose that, I mean, I feel bad for the people in China, in communist
Right.
China, that you know that they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You know?
This conversation has helped me a lot, actually. Just everything that you've shared, because one of the things that I didn't realize I was wrestling on is like, what am I fighting? What is it? Like, what is the face of my enemy in this particular battle? And I realized that, it was perfect when you started of talking about, like, that's not your platform. You were saying, what were you talking about? You were talking about the Cancer Society or the
Mm-hmm.
leukemia. And so from there, and then you kept elaborating, and I realized that, it's not so much that, like, for me, that, because I really am not against anyone receiving the vaccine, the Pfizer and Moderna, I should specify. I don't think, I'm starting to realize that what I'm actually really, really fighting here is for the backbone of the Catholic Church. I think that what I have, yeah, this is it. My qualms have been deeply seated in is actually how quiet the Catholic Church was in the process. We've all known that, that the vaccine was being created, and only now did we get statements like this,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why, like, and because for me it's like, I know that there's actually multiple vaccines that are currently being made that just hasn't been declared what EUA, or like for emergency
Emergency purpose.
yeah, that have no involvement. And so I for like this I've got to say thank you, because that has relieved a lot of, like, my a lot of the weight on my heart, because I I I hold myself to a very high standard as far as not judging. I really try not to judge other people, and so anyone who I know that we disagree on something like that, once I catch myself judging them because of that disagreement or whatever, I, like, I feel really, really guilty, and I try to repent right away. And so this is why, like, these past 2 weeks has been so hard on me, because I know that I'm in the minority of things, even in the Catholic Church, right? And so, but again, like, through the refining of our, through discernment of trying to figure out what we are actually, like, against, is, for me, it's like, I'm not denying the damages that has been done, and what's continued to be being damaged. And, like, I think that I'm just at this point of my young life and into my older life, whatever. I think I've had enough of really quiet bishops, really quiet clergy of the Vatican. Like, I'm just, like, I'm really fed up with it, And this is just one of those things that, like, I really think if we heard more, if we saw more statements, like, in the beginning of the of the pandemic, or I don't even know when the beginning was. Technically, we don't know, but as far as, like, officially, like, the quarantine in March, like, I think, once the vaccine talk was started, I think from then on, if there was more, like, pressure that the Catholic Church put on these pharmaceutical companies, I think it would be a drastic change of like the results of what we would see now.
Mm-hmm.
And because I realized, like, a lot of the things that you had brought up when you were talking, I didn't feel like my uneasiness wasn't from, like, if someone were receiving it, my uneasiness was like, we have so many options. Why didn't that take precedence over these other two ones that are currently being distributed? And like, because for me, it's like I have a lot of families that have taken vaccines. Am I like harboring? That's one of the things I was like trying to figure out with myself. Like, do I need to go to confession for this? Like, what am I feeling? I was trying to figure out like why I'm uneasy. Is it whether if I was judging them, or is it because I'm refusing it? And then throughout this conversation, I realized I'm uneasy because to me, I feel like there could have been another option if we had
Yeah.
put much more pressure
I,
on.
I completely agree with you. My family, we pray. Um, we have these Zoom family prayers for family in the Philippines, family in
Mm.
Chicago, family here, and we all gather together on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays.
Oh.
And it's usually a 30-minute rosary and then a 3-hour chisme moment. We talk about all the
just
people.
just a moment, just 3 hour moment.
3 hours where we talk about stuff. If you weren't there, we're going to talk about you. Uh, that's just
You think we're joking?
it's true. That's Filipino family. So don't miss out on the prayer nights.
Yep.
We have people come late just to make sure we're not talking about you. But again, I put like my sister and my brother-in-law who just recently got out of the hospital from COVID,
Mm.
who are really struggling um, there for a minute, and their worries were that they weren't going to receive the vaccine because they're no longer frontliners because they just decided after that they just retired. You know,
Mm.
they're close enough of age that they weren't going to go back to the workplace where they got the COVID. Um, Again, if you guys wondering where they work, hello, they're Filipinos. Give you one guess. So obviously you know what they're doing. They're in the medical field, so they just retired. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at them and looking at people who are in the Philippines, wondering, um, well, when are we going to get the vaccine? Because that's a third world country,
Mm-hmm.
and who they're not
Who's
probably
gonna buy them?
who's
Yeah.
going to buy them, who's going to give them the
Mm-hmm.
vaccine. Which I'm glad that the church in this document said that their encouragement of, and what we should be doing is encouraging um, social justice.
Mm-hmm.
What we should be encouraging these pharmaceuticals in countries
Yes.
that we live in, that are developed or rich countries,
Yeah.
to make sure that those countries, those people in other parts of the world who are in poverty, that
Yeah.
they also receive the vaccine, not to be left with a leftover vaccine that actually have fetal tissues in it,
Mm-hmm.
but actually give them the
Yeah.
proper vaccines,
Yeah.
the ones
Listen.
that we Catholics in the Western world that have choices should not say, give us the vaccine that does not have fetal cell lines, the good kinds, and then everybody else in the world can have the leftovers.
Yeah.
No, it's, again, one of the great examples um, from a priest that I grew up with. He said that when we give to someone, there's always a panhandler at the side of the freeway, and there's always family members who say, "Oh, don't give to them. They're just gonna buy cigarettes or alcohol or
Mm-hmm.
drugs." And I remember a priest friend of mine said, "When you give, do not think of where they're going to
It's,
spend
yeah.
that. Pray for yourself that you are giving openly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that person uses your money that you donate for a bad purpose, say they bought cigarettes and or they bought alcohol or they bought drugs with your money.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't buy them that drugs. You have no direct cooperation with that. Your intention was good. Vaccine wise,
Mm-hmm.
if I receive this vaccine because my intentions is to provide care for my patients, my clients, my elderly parents who live at home with me, and I work in the medical field, and I have parents who live with me. I have to make that conscious decision. Is this important for me? Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for what God said? Love others. Um, Again, that is a decision, a difficult decision that we have to make. And I think in this document says what is morally permissible. That's that's a huge word. What is morally permissible?
Yeah.
And again, we go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 5, where St. Paul said to the Corinthians, is it okay to eat that meat? Did you sacrifice that animal to those idols? Do you have direct cooperation with that? No, you were just offered a meal. Um, you're offered a meal. Um, it's hard. I mean, it's a loose connection there. It's just
No, I know.
obviously you can see I still struggle with it.
No, I'm super. I'm still, yeah. I'm still right in the
But
struggles.
am I just trying to justify that that I need to I should take this vaccine so I don't lose my job, or so
There's just a lot of
it's
black and white questions. Not black and white questions. There's a lot of gray
a lot
questions
of
in
gray
there.
areas. So
Yeah.
in part of my discernment, I'm like, Lord, am I trying to justify myself?
Yeah, dude.
Um,
Yeah, same.
it's like, and so again, when people ask me, it's like, well, yeah, constantly discerning,
Yeah.
constantly discerning, and when that time comes, you know, I will make an informed
Yeah.
decision, and prayerfully doing so,
Yeah.
using scripture, using what God has taught me, being prayerful about it, and you know, asking for forgiveness. I mean, do I need to ask forgiveness?
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty in this is because like I'm starting to see the beauty of how um weak we are in terms of like making decisions on our own, because it's like, yeah, I can't. God, like I really need you on this one. And one of the hard parts for me too is because like it's so weird to me that this isn't a non this isn't a non-negotiable, because the part of me is like, or a huge part of me is like, shouldn't it be a non-negotiable? Like, shouldn't it be black and white? And so, and I know I fully accept that it's not, and I find beauty in that, like you said, because we exercise this freedom of faith and reason to like not figure it out on our own, but to really check our hearts. Because one of the things that Father Christopher, the one that I follow, what he basically said is, it really depends on your heart. Like, you're obviously the context of your living situation, your family, but it ultimately falls down on your heart. Because I think that's so important to mention, in this platform, because when I think that when everyone begins to making decisions, and checking them with their heart, and like where their heart is at, in the context of God, then then looking at others wouldn't be an opportunity of, am I going to virtue signal because I've checked my heart? It's going to be, everyone has checked their heart, and it's like, and then it's going to be easier to see that truth, or to see the love, because everyone at that point has gone in and discerned and interiorly. And then, because right now, not just right now, but for the past like couple of decades or so, like everything has been an external view towards the internal view.
Mm.
And it's so backwards. And I think that's what makes it so hard to make decisions, especially about this nowadays, not just in my generation, but for everyone. I A lot of the people that like I've been talking to are actually like a little bit younger than me too. And so I can't even imagine how confusing it is for them to see like older Catholics kind of like, no, it's this way, no, it's that way, And so I agree with you of, with, and I'm such a proponent of like, yeah, do your own due diligence. I can tell you my piece, but I'm going to tell you to not even like take mine seriously until you've made your research. Because it is one body, many parts. Like we're not going to, we're not going to end at the same, or we're not going to conclude at the same place, but, it's going to be coming from the same source, if we're discerning properly and,
Yeah.
and faithfully. Yeah.
It is. It's I think it's a simple decision. Um, it's one of those things that the more you get into the faith and to understand the faith, the more challenging it is to live out your faith.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Oh, certainly.
you know, I go back to superhero movies. My favorite, Spider-Man. With great
Ooh,
power comes great responsibility.
responsibility.
I'm like, why, Lord? And it's like, why? Um, and it does, because now people look at you and
Yeah.
say, well, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, you have to give an honest answer
Yeah.
to that and say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, but I will keep looking into it and I will keep praying about it
Yeah.
because I don't have the answers. Um, my best answer is let's talk about it. And I'm glad
Yeah.
we're able to use this platform to be able to talk about it. So hopefully that people, if you guys are watching this and wondering, it's like, they just went around in circles and they still don't have the answer.
That's right.
Um, that's a good thing
Yeah.
because
Yes.
you should not be going up to people to find your
Mm-mm.
answers. You should be
Looked.
reading about it, discerning, speaking to people, listening to podcasts like this, and Just Joe, um, talking to your pastor. And if
Mm-hmm.
the conversation that you have with your pastor does not bear fruit, then go to another person
Yeah.
uh, and seek guidance and discernment, uh,
Mm-hmm.
prayer. If you haven't been praying, if you're virtue signaling out there and said, I'm not going to take, but you haven't prayed about it, uh, that's virtue signaling.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, if you've said some things out there uh, that said, no, definitely I would never do this, or say, yes, I would take the vaccine, and your your thoughts have changed. It's okay.
Yeah.
To,
It really is.
it's okay to say, okay, well,
Hey, science
I've,
changes all the time.
I've changed. You know, God has directed me in a different path, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's okay. You know,
Yeah.
God will love you. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, again, my God, our God,
Mm-hmm.
is a loving God, strict. Uh, that's why He gave us a really convoluted church, because He wants us to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
so
yeah.
this got really heavy. So, Joe, what things do you have in mind? What's coming up in your podcast?
I'm going to be talking about yeah, the next episode is going to be on the Equality Act, actually. HB5 bill.
So you're gonna tackle that, and then what else?
Um the wait, what? That no, the different HB5 bill, it's called the Equality Act, has to touch on religious freedom, which is a huge deal that's going to be voted on by the new new Senate. So January 5, January 6. January 5 is a really important date, people. So whoever has to take control of Senate it's a really big deal. Um, so I think by this time this episode comes out, we would then
Have that new Senate right
yeah,
before it. It's coming out next week.
yeah.
Next week.
So whoever the Senate is, but anyway, so that has to do with religious liberty. And then the one after that, I'm talking about Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that scary that one party, if the Senate becomes um,
Blue.
50-50,
Yeah.
that one party has complete control
Hmm.
over all everything.
All
Yeah,
the, yeah,
legislative body,
the
uh,
executive and legislative
executive
branch. Yeah.
branch. I think what's beautiful about the way that people vote is that it's very rare that one party controls the entire uh,
Yeah.
two branches of government. That's what the checks and balances are. And so I have a friend who's a Democrat
Hmm.
in Georgia who will be
Mm.
voting Republican only because
Because of the checks and
the
balances,
checks and balances.
it's
She
super
is
important.
she's insane. I'm like, but you're a Democrat, and says, yeah, but I also believe in checks and balances. And says, well, good for you. That's a smart voter. It's like,
Yeah. No, I'm with that. Wow.
yeah. So it's interesting,
Hmm.
interesting times we're living in.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you're tackling Roe v. Wade, and so
Yeah. I think, just real quick, I think these are, especially the HB5 one, the Equality Act. I think it's very important to have that kind of conversation, or just to have it out, because like you said, voting locally, or just being in the know. A lot of our religious persecution in the US doesn't happen the same way as it does in like the Middle East, or in China. It creeps up through policies, and so I think that's why it's so hard to see, religious persecution, because it's embedded in the DNA of the institutions and the government. So
and that's so crazy because it never is said in the government that you cannot worship. It's actually protected that you can
yes.
worship.
Yeah.
It's just that you can't. You, actually, the protection is that you can't stop someone from worshiping.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's the
It's the
other way around, and I'm like, wait, that's not what I learned in civics.
yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's a whole different conversation that but yes, I agree. Not just agree, that's just the truth,
I'm
you
like,
know.
are we? I'm like, is this bizarro world that we've twisted things around so much
Oh, yeah,
that
1984.
yeah, it's kind of like the whole thing of the flag "Don't tread on me"
Hmm.
just really meant don't tread on me, on my religious
Yeah.
freedom. Uh, you know, that's period. It's
Yeah.
protected.
Hmm.
Can't take that away. Uh,
Yeah, but it is being slowly. Actually, it is being taken away. Not even slowly anymore. So, but yeah, that's those are the two things I'm tackling next.
those are deep. I'm glad you're tackling those because on this podcast we just talk. It's like, and sometimes we get lost in conversations.
Hey,
Sometimes,
one body, many parts. That's really cool.
sometimes we even forget to turn on record. We forgot to
Yeah.
select record. Yeah. For you guys who don't know, we were actually
Yeah.
talking for a good 5 minutes before I found out. I figured, hey, I didn't click record. Let's redo that.
And 5 minutes is a long minute,
It was,
folks.
and folks, it was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
We missed out. It's like, we had all the content done. After that, it was like downhill from there. I'm just kidding.
Oh man.
Well, anyways, Joe, it's been such a blessing to have you on the podcast. Definitely, I think this connected, like how I put that in there. I've always been trying to be like, how do I get that word in there? But you totally connected with me. I think we have so many things in common. We're both immigrants from,
Yeah.
the motherland,
Mother.
the Philippines. What province are you from?
Laguna.
Laguna, dude.
Yeah.
I'm from Batangas. Where in Laguna?
Oh, Lumban.
Lumban, dude. Like, I think I know where that is. Oh, dude, you have that church in Lumbang.
Uh,
And
uh,
there's that cemetery, underground
yeah.
cemetery.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I've
think
been
so.
there.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, like
super
every.
cool. Yeah, that was when I
Oh.
was in college in the Philippines. I traveled through trying to find all the old churches and the crazy things. That city, Lumbang, has an underground cemetery that's still there. And
You know way more than I do.
that church, I think, is what, 300 years old.
I'm not sure. There's probably you're probably talking about the small one then, because there's two now. Maybe
Really old classic.
one of them.
You're
Yeah,
like on the other side of Laguna Lake.
yeah, we are.
And on the other side of that is San Pablo, St. Paul.
Yes, there you go. That
Yeah.
one.
And then I'm on that side.
Oh, yes, I know Batangas. Yeah,
Santa
that's right.
Tomas is
Ooh,
where,
St. Thomas.
yeah, San Luis Santa Tomas Batangas. The only city that all of the barrios are named after saints.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, every single, there's like no other names. Every single, uh,
classic Filipino.
yeah, Nayon is named after a saint. We're San Luis.
Yes.
St. Thomas Aquinas
Yep.
is our town. There you go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have something in common. You're both Tagalog,
Yeah. Oh
live in
yeah,
the
we
same
are.
area.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's cool.
kind of don't speak any other of the 77 dialects.
Yeah. No. Don't.
No. So, anyways, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Well, we're gonna have you on again to
Cool.
talk
Anytime.
about. Maybe we'll talk about Filipino stuff.
I'm down.
I really do want to have a podcast with immigrant young adults and adults about their experience of growing up in the country as an
Ooh,
immigrant and the experiences. I think that would be a
that would
good
be great.
podcast. I grew up in the United States as an immigrant in the 80s. And so
That's so different than now.
it's so different. I mean, I was called names, chink, nip, gook, jap, those
Oh
kind of
my
things.
gosh.
And I was like, I always ask my daughters, like, did you guys get called like derogatory racist names? And they're like, no. Like, really? I used to get beat up because I was Asian.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you didn't experience that? I'm like, they're like, no. Like, man, I grew up at the wrong time.
I experienced a little bit of it, but I am on the younger side of the older generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, anyways, thank you again for coming on. That's all we have for you guys, fam. On this episode of Disconnected, as usual, we pray this connected. If it did or didn't, please send your comments to our email at catholic.dad50@gmail.com. Or send us a DM on our Instagram account at catholic.dad. Please subscribe to the podcast on any of the many podcast platforms out there. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, please give us a review. It helps in the algorithms of getting our content out there. Obviously, Christian podcasts is very hard to put out there. And it's always getting blocked. So please help us out. And yes, don't forget to donate to support this podcast. You can go into our bio to help support our mission, to help support the needs of youth to remain strong in the faith. Again, just go on our bio on our Instagram, and it's for a good cause. Also, don't forget to follow Just Joe on YouTube and our Instagram. What's your Instagram?
JustJoe.space.
Just
So the
Joe.
spaces you have to actually, it's the word space.
It's not just a space. It's
Yeah.
Just Joe.
Space.
Yeah. All right. Make sure you follow her. Remember, friends, live a life of holiness. We'll be praying for you. Please pray for us. And as always, do what's most important. Be blessed and be third. Good night.
Different points of view and highs and lows. A new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind, drown out the noise, and see if this connected. And see if